Good morning and welcome to London City Airport. Now today we're in Embraer's Phenom 300 bizjet by Carenado, and we are at Orbex's London City Airport rather than UK 2000 London City, which is what you would normally see on this channel. But Orbex released their London City Airport a few weeks ago now, and it is their first all PBR airport. They've now released Edinburgh as well, both done for them by Turbulent Designs. Both full PBR airports, both looking pretty good, I have to say. So I wanted to get it installed in the sim and give it a go, and that's why we are here today. Now we're going to be flying to Nice in the south of France, Nice Côte d'Azur Airport, courtesy of JustSim. I installed that relatively recently, and we'll be flying over France with the France VFR France scenery, and try saying that when you're drunk. Our route today is going to take us. Basically, our departure will be probably the LYD5U, which will take us on a little bit of a loop around East London, then heading south-southeast until we reach the coast, and then we'll make a right turn, run down the channel for a while, make a left turn into northern France, and then it's basically south-southeast, again, down France, past Paris, past Lyon, past Marseille, and then eventually over the mountains and to the coast, and we'll begin our approach to Nice from there. Should be a good landing. I'm expecting to be given runway 22 right. The approach to that is quite interesting compared to the ILS approach into runway 04, and we'll talk more about that when we get down there. But let's not ramble about on the ground. We'll keep this video to a reasonable length if I can. It is a 2.25 hour flight or thereabouts. I will obviously cut out the boring bits, which is probably most of the middle. But I'm going to try and keep it down short and keep it to one part if I possibly can. So, first thing, let's just close the doors because my imaginary passengers have now boarded. There we go, and we'll get back in the aircraft. Here we are. Right, that's better. As you can see, the cockpit is pretty much the same as the Phenom 100. Which you saw on the channel last year, which is the smaller brother of this aircraft. Barring a few extra features, this one's got spoilers, and it's a little bit faster, and it can carry more passengers. Things are largely the same as you saw there. But I have made some improvements in terms of systems displays. I'll talk about that. You won't see anything on the G1000 screens in the cockpit. I have removed those gauges from the panel so they don't detract from my frame rate, because as usual, I'm using the Flight 1 Tech external G1000 software, which of course means that I've got the G1000 hardware back in the cockpit, and I can talk a bit about that and other changes when we're en route. But first of all, let's have a listen to the ATIS.
Echo Golf Lima Charlie Airport information Delta 0420 Zulu weather wind 069er at 13 visibility 10,000 sky condition ceiling 1,300 overcast temperature 15 dew point 12 QNH 1026 advise on initial contact. You have information
Delta 620 start approved, temperature's 9.
Okay, that was a slightly inopportune breaking in there. But we have the information. I didn't quite catch the letter there, but no problem because Pro ATCX knows what it is and will use it. Just while I'm here, I'm going to turn off the background ATC in Pro ATCX for the moment, as we don't really need it while I'm doing a lot of talking. Okay, so as you can hear, it's overcast around London. The cloud ceiling is about 1,300 feet. It's not very thick. We'll get through it pretty quickly. Once we're above, it's clear above there, and then once we get about midway across the channel, the cloud gives way to clear skies. There will be haze pretty much all the way, and there's a fair bit of mist floating around the mountain valleys when we get to the south of France. So, particularly on the approach into Nice, we might be a little bit mistbound, but when we get right down to the final approach, we'll have a good view of what's going on. And I've set the sim time back to midsummer. So this is Friday, June the 28th, 2019. So I'm using historical weather data and historical time because just flying down to Nice at the moment, the weather is pretty crappy. So I guess people wouldn't want to fly down there for a summer break in the late autumn. Alright then, we need to get the clearance, so you'll notice a couple of things. One is that the camera arrangement's a little bit different. There's a reason for that. The main camera that I normally park behind me is actually broken. So the sensor appears to be failing, and I'm getting all kinds of weird digital video glitches on any footage that I take, which has meant I've actually had to abandon previous attempts at this video. This is, I think I've counted right, attempt number 16 to make this video, so don't say that I never do anything for you, and maybe I'll talk about the things that got in the way when we're en route. But you'll see I have this iPad mini, and the iPad mini is, this particular iPad mini is new. I've had an iPad mini stuck on the back of my pedestal there since the sim began. You've just never seen it because I never used it, and the reason I never used it is because it didn't have pencil support. This one does. I did buy a pen that said it could write on earlier generation Apple iPad minis and iPads, and it did work by simulating a finger press, but it's just nowhere near as good, nowhere near as responsive as the pencil. So I decided to upgrade and get this. So I'm going to get a 4-flight scratch pad up. This is the craft scratch pad for clearance. So you write where you're cleared to here. This is your routing, so initial routing, initial altitude, departure frequency, and the transponder code. So you can write it on a scrap of paper. It's just as easy to do it here. So I'm going to get the clearance and write it down as we go. But I will just check the frequency first. Oh, it is in place. We've got a radio frequency change problem with Pro ATCX, specifically when using the G1000. I'll talk about that later on.
Clearance delivery, Prepar3d with the ATIS for request clearance.
British 008, cleared to LFNN via LYD5 uniform departure and then as filed. Climb and maintain 3000. Expect flight level 310 within 10 minutes after departure. Departure frequency 130.85. Squawk 2562. QNH 1026.
Cleared via the LYD5 uniform departure. Climb into 3000. Expect flight level 310 within 10 minutes after departure. Departure frequency 130.85. Squawk 2562. QNH 1026. Prepar3d
British 008. Read back correct. Contact ground control on 123.55.
Roger. 123.55. Prepar3d
Alright, let's just go to 123.55 before we forget. 55. Go over, and I'm just going to check the frequency again. No, that didn't work. So there's a perfect example. Change the frequency in the simulator. The simulator is registered the change, but Pro ATCX doesn't pick it up. When that happens, all you have to do is set the live and standby to be the same frequency. Change the frequency again, and now everybody agrees what it is. But it is a bit of a pain, and I will hand over the frequency changes to the co-pilot later on, just to avoid having to do that. Alright, so I got my clearance details here. I actually bought some little magnetic mounting points, so I can put the iPad here, or actually, slightly better, I can put it here on my yoke. I was hoping I could get it a little bit higher up, so I could actually fly with it in place. Unfortunately, the yoke here is just too narrow, so unless I fancy fitting a new yoke handle or, well, I'm not sure what else really. I suppose I could find some way to angle the iPad a bit further forward so it could do this, maybe. I might look into that, but for now that's the best I can do. Leave it there whilst we set things up. So, let me just take you to this view. So this is the view you're going to be seeing for most of the flight. It's a bit like the previous views on previous videos, but this is the first time doing it with the G1000 system. So you can see we've got the G1000 PFD on the left, G1000 MFD on the far right, and then in the middle we've got a systems display, and we've got the weather radar. Now the weather radar is the Hi-Fi X gauge, which comes with Active Sky. I don't normally use that. I normally use the Milviz WX Advantage weather radar, which I rather like and I think is superior, unless you're looking directly for an integration with Active Sky, in which case obviously X gauge is much better because it does things like this mini map display. But WX Advantage isn't currently compatible with P3D 4.5 hotfix 2, which came out a few weeks ago. So I just had to go back to X-Gauge for now, and that's fine. I'll swap back to Milviz as and when they produce a version that's compatible. Okay, so the systems display is probably the thing to talk about. That is a series of gauges or gauge parts that I took out of Caranado's G1000 MFD. So this, the left-hand side, that bit of the instrumentation would be on the left-hand side of the MFD. Excuse me, I seem to have allergies today, don't know why. So that bit would always be on the left side of the MFD, then there would also be the map on the right-hand side, which I've removed. And then there's these various different status pages that you could bring up, and I've just aligned those to the right-hand side of this display. So we have the status summary page, but then you've got the environmental control page, electrical page, fuel page, ice protection. So we've got access to most of the systems, and this is important because none of this stuff will appear in the Flight1Tech G1000. The Flight1Tech doesn't support jets, it doesn't support turboprops, it only supports piston engines natively, and this aircraft is not one of the ones that it accommodates. So I've done what I normally do, which is I've adjusted all the V-speeds so they are correct and the calculations will be correct, and then I've provided my own instruments. But I also that would also leave me with an engine display on the G1000, the Flight1Tech G1000 MFD, which I don't want. So I just wrote a little piece of software, and all it does is it generates coloured rectangles on the screen, and you can make them any size you want, you can position them any way you want, you can make them any colour you want, and it stays on top all the time, and that means it can cover over areas of the screen. So where you see on the MFD on the right there, the left-hand side of the MFD, there is a strip down the left that is just black and empty. Actually, that is the engine display for the Flight1Tech G1000. It is there underneath, you just can't see it because it's being overlaid by a black rectangle generated by my software. And that was pretty easy to do. It's a simple little program, but it's been very effective in terms of letting me use the G1000 in a meaningful way. So if anybody does want that software, let me know. I'm quite happy to send it to you. Obviously, no warranty implied, and sight as seen, but I'm happy to give you the code for that, compiled or source code. Okay, let's program things. So keep an eye primarily on the PFD. So we're going to set the initial altitude to 3000. Going to dial in 130.85 in the departure frequency. You can see it's already set as the live frequency, but I'm going to put it in as the standby just to avoid that Pro ATCX problem. We've already scored 2562, QNH 1026, that was already in before from the ATIS, and we're just going to put in the procedure. So press the proc key on my G1000, get the procedures menu, select departure, scroll down the menu until we find LYD5 uniform. That applies to all runways, and the transition is LYD, and we'll load that. Okay, so that is the G1000 initially set up. I can put away the iPad back in its little holder. For some reason, I find it incredibly difficult to do that without actually physically seeing where it is. There we go. I should probably put a magnetic clasp on the back of that instead. Right, well, we're about ready, I think, to just quickly run through the checklist, and then we'll ask for startup. So let's start with the cockpit safety checklist. Only some of these are this is a real world checklist. It's a summary one that I got online. It's from some outfit called Jet Aviva, presumably a fractional jet company. So it has lots of stuff on that's not relevant to the sim, so I'll just omit all of those. So electrical panel check. Let's just go and have a look at the electrical panel. There we go, and I'll zoom in a bit. Now we're trying to find your way around this cockpit by touch is a bit of a pain. Let me just give you that view. So here's the electrical panel. As you can see, the batteries are on. Generators are on auto. Ground power is connected. That's correct. Circuit breakers, not relevant. Pneumatic panel, check. So pneumatic panel is here above it. We need both bleed valves on and crossfeed to auto. Right, then we've got the fuel pumps should be on auto. They're up here. There we go. Hydraulic pump SOV switches should also be open. ELT should be armed. The pusher cutout should be pushed out. It is. Signs outlet should go to paired belts off. There we go. Heating panel. That's all good for the moment. Windshield heating will go on later. Ice protection panel. Again, we're good for the moment. Let's just move around a little bit. Landing gear lever should be down. It is. Pressurization panel, check. Pressurization mode is auto. Air conditioning panel as required. It's off. We'll go on later. Fire extinguisher panel, check. Yep. Bottle is off and shut-off valves are currently closed. Will be opened when we start. Start-stop knobs to stop. They are. Flap lever to 0. It is. Speed brake closed. It is. Parking brake set. It is. Seats and belts should be notified, and they have been. Alright, that is the cockpit safety checklist complete. We're going to ask for startup next, so we'll just go straight onto the before start checklist. Winds, aircraft orientation, check with its start limits. Yeah, they're fine, 13 knots at 70 degrees. Engine ignition to auto. Thrust levers to idle. They are. Batteries on. They are. GPU is required. It's set. And active. Parking brake set. Yes. Chocks removed. Yes. Navigational database is current. Yes. Fuel quantity and balance. We've got full tanks. And we're balanced. In fact, we've got way more fuel than we need. I should probably remove some, but it's not that critical. This is not a study level simulation. Oxygen pressure, check. Yep, pressure 1850 psi is good on the ground. Lights as required, emergency lights on, they are. Test panel. Alright, so we've got to use the test panel over here now. That's a little bit more of a pain in the bum. So, test panel is down here. But I need to show you the whole panel in order for you to see what's going on. So I'm just going to have to... This is where... Do you know what? I'm actually going to use the mouse. Bear with me a second. So, I don't normally use the mouse, unless I absolutely have to. But right-clicking on a touchscreen is a pain in the bum, if we're being brutally honest. I wish there was some way I could sort of customize the touch so that double touch or something would do it, but what you have to do is press and hold. Well, that's great, but if you press and hold too long, then of course you get the menu, and that's the problem. So it's really, really hard. So I'm just going to run this with the mouse. So this is the test button. This is the fire alarm test.
Fire, fire.
There you go. Then the smoke alarm test.
Fire, fire.
Same alert. Then this is just a visual test. So you probably can see those enunciators light up there. That's off, and then this is
Stall
warning test. And this is again just visual. I'm really not sure what it does. I can't actually see anything happening anywhere. You can tell I really care about this bit, can't you? Anyway, there you go. I'll get rid of the mouse now. Right. Altimeters set and cross-check. They are. Flight plan enter. It is. Weather radar on standby. It is. LFE enter. LFE is correct. Minus 200 feet on the ground here at London City. Speeds, etc. This aircraft doesn't simulate that stuff, so we'll just deal with the standard settings. Flight director AFCS should be set. I'm going to turn it on. Comms nav transponder set. They're good for departure. Taxi, takeoff briefing. Complete. Well, there's only me flying, so let's say that it is. While I'm here, I'm going to set VS mode in and put it to 1800 feet per minute for our initial climb. I'm going to arm the GPS mode. That's just so I can activate the autopilot very quickly after takeoff, because I'll need to do that so I can manage the speeds. Alright, I think at this point we're good to ask for startup, so let's do that.
Ground Prepar3d. Request startup.
British 008. Startup is approved.
Okay. Starting the aircraft is pretty easy. So this is a FADEX system, full authority digital engine control. And you can see that actually by the thrust levers, which have a bunch of detents for different power settings. The computer works out exactly how to express those in terms of thrust settings. So it will do all of those
British
calculations for you.
008. Did you copy?
Roger. Startup approved. Prepar3d.
Never forget to reply to ATC. It's always a bad look. So all I have to do really is turn the start knobs to start for each engine, and things will just happen. But if you watch the systems panel, top left of the systems panel, you can see the engine readout. So we've got the N1 big dial at the top. That will ramp up to 27%, which is idle. Underneath the turbine temperature, that will go at startup right round to where that yellow tick mark is, and it will settle back to normal temperature. And then the N2, which is the number underneath those, that will run to 20%. When it hits 20%, fuel will be injected and the engine should start. And then we've got the oil pressure and temperature underneath, which again will increase. And the fuel flow is underneath that, so we can see fuel is flowing. So pretty simple. We'll just monitor those gauges, make sure nothing goes awry. Everything else should be good. Don't even have to turn on the beacon light, as the aircraft does that automatically. And we'll turn it off again when I shut down the engines on the other end. So, parking brake is set. We are ready to go. Open the shut-off valves for both engines and start number 1. Okay, N2 is rising. N1 is rising. Oil pressure is rising. N2 is at 17, 18, 19, and here's 20. And we have engine start. M1 coming up to 27%. Fuel flow looks good. Good start number 1. Start number 2. N2 is climbing. N1 is climbing. Oil pressure is rising. Fuel flow is rising. N2 at 17, 18, 19, and 20, temperature rising and settling, and the M1 is rising to 27%. And we have a good start on number 2. Alright, so the ignition switches can go off, at least they can do if I can manage to do a right click properly. There we go. So, after start checklist. Engine instruments check, they look good. GPU disconnect. Ground power is disconnected. Air conditioning to auto. Flight controls free and correct. Yeah, look good. Trims, check and set. Well, they're good, but I'm going to set the nose pitch. Nose pitch? Well, okay. Aileron pitch. Down to 8.8. Keep the nose down a little bit when we take off. You do need a relatively steep climb out of city, but we don't want to bust our altitude. This thing does go like a rocket, and if you don't control it properly, you'll be at 5,000 feet and 280 knots before you know it. So you've got to keep it under control on the way up. Ice protection as required, don't need it. Block out time record. So that's 0427 Zulu. And I'm going to start... I know, I was going to say I'd start the timer, but that's not what you use the timer for. There's nowhere in the G1000 to record the block time, so you would just write it down. So yeah, 0427 Zulu. We have a good start. Everything is set and we're ready to ask for our departure. Pitot heat goes on.
Ground Prepar3d. Request taxi.
British 008. Taxi via Alpha to runway 09.
Via Alpha to runway 09. Prepar3d.
British 008. Contact tower on 118.07.
118.07. Prepar3d.
Okay, so the runway's just over there. You can actually see the tip of the runway. That's runway 09. That's where we're going. It's a very short taxi. That's why he's already handed us over to the tower. I'll put the tower frequency in. I appear to have a slightly dodgy connection on the back of my G1000. I know what it is. It's the power cable. It just needs resoldering. Just check that frequency took. It did. Wow, remarkably. Alright, we're good to go. Let's get out of here. Parking brake goes off. Nav lights on. Taxi lights on. Clear to the left. Clear to the right. We have our taxi instructions. We can go. So, just get my feet on the rudder pedals. And give us a little power. And we're moving. The nose wheel on this aircraft is a ways forward of the pilot's seating position, so you got to turn relatively early. So yeah, check out the PBR textures in this airport. They're quite nice. Most of these aircraft are static and came with the airport, which is why they look very nice and also PBR-ish. Not that Flybe, that is AI, which is why it looks a bit crap. It's also parked in the wrong place. The AFCAD for this airport appears to be broken or possibly non-existent. GSX refuses to start with this airport. Hopefully Orbex will fix that as the fire station. But the modelling of the airport is much more realistic than the UK 2000. I'm not knocking the UK 2000, they make really good airports. But, you know, in many cases their buildings are an approximation. This is pretty much how this airport looks in real life. Apart from all the building work that's going on down at the other end of the apron. Now we're not rolling past all these aircraft, we're not going to runway 28, so you won't get to see some of the full glory of the airport, but I'm sure you will do in due course. Let's just continue our taxi and ask the tower for takeoff clearance. Once we get to hold short. So let's just stop there for a second.
Tower Prepar3d, holding short at runway 09, ready for departure.
British 008, line up runway 09er.
Lining up runway 09, Prepar3d.
Flaps need to come out to 2. Strobe lights are going on. So you can see the runway texture is affected by the ambient light. That's the PBR. It's very nice. It's also, as I say, a much more accurate model of the airport and some of the surrounding buildings. Most of these surrounding buildings that you see are actually part of the airport scenery. The only thing that's really wrong is that for whatever reason the size of the dock there, rather than being solid textures, appear to just be kind of water, which is silly. Runway lights
British 008,
go off.
wind 070 at 13, runway 09 clear for takeoff. Good flight.
Runway 09 cleared for takeoff, Prepar3d.
Right, before takeoff checklist, brakes check, yes. Takeoff configuration check, yes. Good. Flight instruments check, they all look good. CAS messages check, there are none. Ice protection is required, we need none. Lights set, landing light goes on. Time off record, it's 0432 Zulu, time of departure. We're on the brakes, let's pump it to 65%. Yep, and now takeoff power. N1 is at max. Off we go. Now we're going to get a leftward drift because of the wind, so I'm just going to put in a bit of rudder to correct that. That's 80 knots. And rotate. And we're up. Okay, positive rate, gear up. Just following the flight director for the moment. Everything looks good, autopilot going on.
British 008, contact departure on 130.85.
130.85, Prepar3d.
Alright,
Vertical track.
let's go over to COM2 and check in.
Departure Prepar3d.
And the aircraft is beginning to manoeuvre.
1,800 for 3,000.
British 008. Radar contact. Continue via Lima Yankee Delta 5 uniform departure route. Climb to 3000.
Via the LYD5 uniform departure. Climbing to 3,000
Flaps coming up.
Prepar3d.
Power is going to go to continuous climb mode. It's quite difficult to balance on these throttles. There we go though. I'm going to keep my eye on the speed. I can't go over 250 and I'm about to. I'm going to slow down a bit.
British 008. Climb to flight level 150.
Climbing to flight level 150, Prepar3d.
Right, I'm going to go to flight level change mode and I'm going to set the speed at 230 knots. That will let the aircraft lift the nose a bit now. There we go, coming up. We're following the course, I mean not that precisely because we are a bit on the quick side. I think this departure is meant to be flown probably more like 220 knots. Or maybe even a little bit less. Never mind, but you see we're making a big turn here. We're not through the clouds yet, we just happen to be in a gap. So I'll be back in the clouds in a minute. Just keeping my eye primarily on the speed. So I'm going to give it a bit more power. And the aircraft will trade climb rate for speed. And I'm going to push it all the way to con climb mode, continuous climb. As soon as I'm sure it will not bust speed limit. Alright, there we go. Speed is good, but again, I'm just keeping an eye on it. Rate of climb, nearly 4,000 feet per minute. We're cleared to 15,000. We should get cleared up to 31,000 pretty much straight away. After takeoff checklist, landing gear check up, yes. Flaps 0, yes. Thrust levers on climb, yes. Yaw damper on, it is. Pressurization check. Cabin altitude is rising. Delta P looks good. Alright. That is a good takeoff. And now we're through the cloud. So it is clear skies from now on. Well, I say clear skies. Clear skies and haze from now on. Alright. So, we're about to make a big right turn. And that's going to head south-southeast towards Detling, DET, which is our next VOR. And from there it's pretty much a straight line to Lid, LYD. And at Lid we'll make another big right turn and we'll head out along the channel, adjusting our track so that we can turn left again when we reach
Speedbird 2 with you, passing flight level 1324, flight level 80.
Speedbird 2,
head out across Northern
Roger,
France.
descend to flight level 80.
Descending to flight level 80, Speedbird 2.
So, I mentioned earlier on that this was the 16th attempt to make this video. I believe that's correct. So what has been stopping me? Well, so many things, it's not even funny. So right back at the beginning, I had software problems. I had the simulator crashing for various reasons. Some software updates eventually seemed to fix that. had problems with the Flight1Tech G1000. It was not following the course properly. It was flying past waypoints and not noticing it had flown past them, and just you'd fly way off track. I actually had to report that to the Flight1Tech support team, and all credit to them. They got their developers on it.
British 008.
As I climb.
Climb to flight level 250.
Alright, another step before we get to 3-1.
Climbing to flight level 250, Prepar3d.
And Flight1Tech did solve those bugs. They weren't actually bugs in the software, so I think they were happy to have them reported. And I've now got a test version of the software running which solves those. They haven't released it properly yet. I think they're going to do that sometime in the next couple of months, so everybody else can upgrade. But if you're a Flight1Tech software user and you're having problems with it ignoring your waypoints, there is a fix coming. Okay, I'm just going to turn on the weather radar. We don't really need it, it's going to be clear, but we might as well have it on. There we go. I'm going to leave it out to 100 nautical miles, just in case. So beyond that, what else happened? Well, I had to go away for most of the month of July. I was out of the country, so I couldn't use the sim, so I wasn't able to make any attempts. And then just a comedy of errors, really. I mean, I would fluff the takeoff badly enough that I'd want to stop, or I would fluff the landing badly enough that I want to stop, or something would crash, or I would forget to turn on the camera, or having turned on the camera, I'd realise I'd forgotten to erase the previous attempt's video. The camera would run out of memory halfway down the track. On one occasion I got as far as landing, got the rear wheels on the ground and prepared, flat out crashed. And then I discovered that my camera was recording dodgy footage. I actually hadn't looked at the footage for many of these attempts because I just restarted them. And when I eventually thought I'd finished and got all the footage together and started editing it, I found glitch after glitch after glitch on the footage from the main camera, and realised that is actually faulty. So that's why I'm using my GoPro, which would normally be over here, back behind me. In fact, you should be able to see it on this camera's view. So that's up there recording this screen. It does give me a wider view, which is probably not a bad thing. But obviously a GoPro is not as good as a professional camcorder. And then I've dug my old GoPro and my Hero 4 out, and I'm using that on the left hand side there.
British 008. Contact London on 128.47. Bye bye.
128.47 Prepar3d.
Right, I am going to tell Pro ATCX that the co-pilot will deal with the radios. And I'll turn on background ATC and we can leave them to get on with their stuff. Okay, so we're past Det and we're on the way to Lid.
With you at flight level 270.
Saudi 107. Descend to flight level 220.
Descending to flight level 220. Saudi 107.
Saudi 107. Roger 4301. Descend to flight level 250.
Descend to flight level 2504301.
It's quite busy in its airspace. There's a lot of people talking on the radio.
Descend to flight level 2504301.
Apparently he wants to answer twice. So we haven't got our final climb instruction yet, which is unusual. I would normally have had it by now, but there's so much traffic. I'm not entirely surprised. He hasn't got around to me yet, but I'm sure he will. But we're about to hit Lid and we'll make our big right turn down into the channel at Lid. Right, so what else can I tell you? Well, in terms of updates and changes to the sim, there's not been a lot. I've mentioned most of them in terms of new scenery. The Phenom 300 we're flying today has actually been in the sim for a while. You just haven't seen me fly it on the channel. So this is new to the channel but not new to the sim. I've upgraded both machines to Prepared 4.5 hotfix 2 now, so we are on the very latest version of Prepared, and obviously I've done my monthly updates to Navigraph, etc. But other than that, things are pretty much as they were last time. I haven't changed any hardware. I think the last major hardware change was made before I made the previous video. I've done a bit of rearranging of stuff, so the main computer now sits actually underneath my console here, which means I get a bit of space back, although it does mean I now have a hot breeze blowing on my ankle. So I might put a fan down there or something, try and suck the hot air out of the way.
07, descend to flight level 170.
Descending to flight level 170, Saudi 107.
4301, descend to flight level 200.
Descend to flight level 200, 4301.
Right, I'm making a big right turn. I'm going to disengage flight level change mode for now, and just leave it on VS mode, and let the speed build up a little bit, and then I can re-engage flight level change to 260 knots, which is better for this altitude. And yeah, in terms of aircraft and scenery, not much new. The France VFR scenery I talked about is new. The Nice scenery is new. London City is new. I will be probably buying Orbex's Edinburgh, which they released a couple of weeks ago, as a replacement, temporary or permanent, for my existing UK 2000 Edinburgh. So you might see that on the channel fairly soon. Other than that, I'm kind of on the lookout for places to go and scenery to download. So if anyone's got any suggestions for good places to fly from the UK, or indeed from elsewhere, let me know. At some point I will get into flying in the US, but I'm not quite ready for that yet, I don't think. I did buy scenery for the whole state of Vermont, because I'm going to start doing the training exercises from a book that I have. And all those training exercises take place at a small airfield in Vermont.
Climb to flight level 370.
Climbing to flight level 370, SAS 4683.
Scandinavian
Right.
4683.
Climb has slowed down a lot.
Descending to flight level 270.
So I'm actually gonna max power.
Speedbird 124. Climb and maintain flight level 170.
Climb and maintain flight level 170.
And see if I can gain myself some speed.
British 008. Climb and maintain flight level 3.
That would explain a lot.
Climb and maintain flight level 310, BRT 008.
So I still have flaps 1 out. Now I did actually bring the flaps back in, so what almost certainly happened was I jogged the flaps lever with my hand. At the moment it's very sensitive, and just jogging it can cause it to go to flaps 1. I need to trim the sensitivity in FSU IPC a little bit, so that you can't do that, because I could literally just clip it with my hand now and it would go to flaps 1. So I didn't even notice that had happened. See, in the past that was probably the sort of thing that would make me restart this video, because it's not perfect. But perfection doesn't ever happen, and it wasn't, an honest mistake. Now, whether or not at these kind of speeds I would have broken the flaps, I don't know, but they don't seem to be damaged.
Speedbird 295, jet traffic, flight level 33 or 370 to close, flight level 350 is unavailable.
Quite happy with 330, we'll maintain that, Speedbird 2958, thanks.
Roger, direct to Margo, Speedbird 295.
Direct Margo, Speedbird 2958.
Right, I'm going to up the VS rate and slow us down a little bit, because obviously as soon as we put the flaps in, the speed picked up quite dramatically. So yeah, a little bit of a wrinkle there, but I'm gonna overlook it. These things happen. But yeah, if I just whack it, you have to whack it reasonably hard, but that does happen occasionally. So just shows you what happens if you don't pay attention. Alright, so I'm going to engage flight level change mode again. I'm going to set the speed down to 260 knots. And let the aircraft make its best speed up to 310. And leave, well, once we hit 310, I'll just reduce the thrust levers back to cruise mode, and we'll cruise along at about 290 knots IAS, which is about the right speed. And our true airspeed will probably get up to around about 430, 440 knots. This is quite a quick little aircraft. Okay, well, we are about to enter what I would charitably call the boring stage of the flight. There's not a great deal to see. There's not an awful lot for either of us to do. And there's not a great deal else I can tell you about what's going on. I mean, I have got idle chit-chat, and I thought I would talk a little bit about the new Microsoft Flight Simulator and my thoughts about that, because it looks like it's going to be quite a big thing. A really, really big thing. And there's been some announcements recently, most recently from PMDG, which have got the community quite excited. So maybe we'll talk about my thoughts on that later and what that means for my sim. But I think we'll do that once we get to the south of France and we're on our descent into Nice. So, for now at least, unless something interesting happens along the way, I will leave you here, and I'll see you again when we are on our descent into Nice.
300 s'il vous plaît. En reposition, continue le virage 4300, il doit le 493. Voilà, vous vous mettez en réduction de vitesse si vous n'avez pas déjà réduit, 182 maximum pour le moment. Oui, 182, donc on va accélérer, il doit le 493.
Okay folks, it's the end of part 1. This video is too long for one part, but come back for part 2 on the channel very soon.